So we already got Chris Lee. We're going to go straight to him. Chris Lee, VandySports.com, joining us live to preview this weekend's game. Chris, first of all, man, we appreciate the time. Appreciate you being on. How's everything going in Nashville?
We are well, as you can maybe see by the hat, getting ready for first pitch of the Braves, seeing what they're going to do. So exciting times here.
Yeah, we're the same way, man. We actually sort of snuck the show up a little bit earlier today and yesterday and the day before, I guess, because of the game as well. So hopefully our Braves can finish this thing off. And obviously, Chris, two teams right now getting to South Carolina and Vanderbilt that, unfortunately for both teams, have sort of had similar starts, at least as far as the record goes. What's sort of the mindset with this Vanderbilt team right now? I was listening to Derek Mason. I know he was happy with their practices this week. It was kind of interesting. He sort of mirrored Will Muschamp's comments. He said there's some juice from the guys this week at practice. But what's sort of the feel around this program right now as two 0-2 teams get ready to battle on Saturday?
Well, their thing is the same as South Carolina's. They just need a win against anybody at any time. It's been since ETSU last year, so that's 3 straight. Now, Carolina's losing streak is longer, but it's also been against a pretty brutal schedule. So, look, this is a team that you looked at the SP Plus rankings coming into the season. Vanderbilt was expected to be a 13-point underdog or worse in every game. When you have a bar that's set there before the season where you're not expected to be within single digits of anybody, that's a tough place to come from. Now, having said that, they go out against Texas A&M. They play A&M within 5 points with nobody had expected. They were a 30.5-point underdog. But, look, they need to get a win somewhere. Probably the 3 best chances in a row are coming up the next 3 weeks for them. But in the SEC, nothing's ever easy. Carolina is a 12-point favorite for a reason, but the Georgias and the Floridas and the Tennessees are on the schedule at the end of the year. So I think both teams are probably looking at this the same way, because I know Carolina's got a brutal schedule coming up that, hey, if we can't get one here, it's going to get tougher ahead.
Chris, want to go big picture for you here real quick before we dive fully into the, sort of individual matchup. But what is the tone in Vanderbilt right now overall with athletics, with football? Obviously, Derek Mason has been a guy who's had his job status questioned. There's been some changes within the athletic department, in the past couple of years. Just sort of run down sort of what the mood is right now, sort of the state of the program right now.
It's bizarre. I think everybody thinks coming into the season that Derek Mason was safe. And the COVID pandemic has given everybody an extra layer or two of job security, allegedly. I mean, we will wait and see when the season is over. But the thought was that with these crazy times and him also having a buyout that I think is $7 million at the end of this year, that it was going to be tough for them to part ways. Everybody has suffered financially. There's less cash to do those things. The optics of paying a guy not to coach are not great. On the other hand, let's say they go through this season 0-10. They're coming off of 2019 where they were 3-9, and all 9 of those losses were by 17 points or more. So you try to convince your fan base and your recruits where the light is at the end of the tunnel. That becomes really tough to do. Because assuming he has a losing season, guys, he's going to start his Vandy career with 7 losing seasons in a row. Nobody survives that other than the Vandy. So that's one dynamic. Now, the other one is how things have changed. A really interesting thing happened a couple of weeks ago. They brought in Tommy McClelland from Louisiana Tech, and Tommy McClelland was the AD at Louisiana Tech. He is now the deputy AD at Vanderbilt, and he's been trying to get a Power 5 AD job for a while. So that has wrought a ton of questions, right? Why would you leave a pretty good job, not at a Power 5 level, but I would think Louisiana Tech is one of the better non-Power 5 jobs. He was successful. There were a lot of things there. So that begs the question, why did Tommy McClelland come to Vanderbilt for a demotion? What I've been hearing is he's been given charge to run the I've heard that from several sources. They will never confirm that because they're very invested in Candace Lee. They have been from the beginning. They have tried to prop her up like crazy, and she has basically screwed up everything that she's touched publicly in that time. So all that to say, I don't know that the president is really enamored with her. I don't know that he's really enamored with some of his administrators. Daniel Diermeyer, who's their new president, just got there in May. And so that's the wild card in this, okay? You had this backdrop of where I think he was safe in his job, but there's been a lot of fan unrest around this situation. Fans have not been showing up for games when they've been allowed. And so now I'm kind of watching to see is what does the president think? What is the guy that I've been told is effectively the AD going to think? How does that play out against the backdrop of all these crazy things, not just in the AD, but in 2020? That's a long answer to your question, but it's a really complicated question at the same time.
Wes, you're muted.
Excuse me, I was muted there for a second. A lot going on there. Again, we're joined by Chris Lee, VandySports.com. And Chris, so getting into the game, I started, trying to research about this Vanderbilt team a little bit, and I start reading through the offense, and I realize I'm like, man, new, freshman quarterback, lose a really talented running back. I see there's opt-outs on the offensive line. Talented tight end from last year is gone. Is it just – and there's a new offensive coordinator on top of that. So has this Vandy team been able to find sort of what it can lean on yet offensively or sort of even what it wants to be on offense? I mean, I think South Carolina, save maybe a guy or two, has been in a similar situation offensively so far where they're trying to figure out, what can they major in? Like, what can they do well, at least, and sort of focus on that part of their offense. So what have you seen just from the offense, the scheme? Is it completely all new guys on that side of the ball? Because I know they lost a lot from last year.
Yeah, I think the best way to answer that, and again, this is a little bit of a long answer, but to set the stage, they had an offensive line that last year, Pro Football Focus ranked 128 of the 130 teams in Division I. Now, from that, they lost their left tackle, who transferred out, who was their best player, probably their best player on the team, frankly. They had two guys that I think would have started opt out in preseason camp, and they had Steven Spinellis, who I think would have been their super sub maybe on the offensive line. He was a grad transfer from Michigan, opt out. So, again, bad situation made worse by guys opting out. They are filling in with green kids, the right side of their line. I think you will see Bradley Ashmore start at right tackle. He's a true freshman who enrolled in the spring. Beside him, inside at right guard, is Drew Birchmeyer. He was a defensive tackle his first 4 years at Vanderbilt and switched over in fall camp. I think that kind of sets the stage here. I mean, the first week, all five of their linemen played every snap, played better than I thought, but that's factor number one. Factor number two, they don't have a lot of explosive playmaking options. I like Amir Abdul-Rahman. He got shut down last week by Derek Stingley at LSU, who is maybe the best cover corner in the country. They've got another kid in the slot, Cam Johnson, who's pretty good. Beyond that, I'm not sure they've got a proven SEC receiver on that offense. So you take the offensive line situation, you take the receiver situation, you take all the other things that you guys have brought up. Then you throw in a true freshman quarterback, who I think is pretty talented, but I'm not sure Peyton Manning is going to succeed in that spot. I think Ken Seals, their quarterback, is really talented. He's good with the ball. I dropped the Danny Werfel comp on him earlier, and I'm not saying he's that, but like when you think about how accurate Werfel was with the ball, he might not have the strongest arm, but he had command of things, and he knew where to go with it, and he was poised. I think he's kind of in that mold of a player where he can usually put the ball where he wants to go, but he's very limited with what's going on around him. You go back to last week, you look at the highlights or just the game, it seemed like the second half was on a loop, where it was they run a play to the left if they choose to run, or when they pass, they roll them out to the right. He strings out the play as long as it will go, and he ends up winding up almost out of bounds, dumping the ball off, just getting rid of it because they didn't have guys open downfield. they're just in a bad way offensively. And I don't know. I think they need to use more motion, maybe a little less predictability with first down runs, but it's not an enviable situation no matter what you do with it from a scheme's perspective.
Yeah, and as Wes alluded to there, I think a little bit of similarities there where South Carolina trying to find their footing with, playmakers, on the outside, aside from Shi Smith at the receiver position. But, I want to go back to that first game against A&M because you hit on it earlier. I don't think there was an expectation, and I don't know what, there were some different opinions on A&M coming into this year. They don't appear to be as good as maybe some people thought, and they've certainly had some opt-outs and some things too. But first 2 weeks, they haven't been great. Vanderbilt played them very close. Now, A&M had 3 turnovers in that game. Vanderbilt also had 2 turnovers. But what did you see in that contest? How was Vanderbilt able to play them, so closely?
I think if we look back and Vanderbilt has upset someone at the end of the season, I think we see something similar to what they did to the Aggies. Their defensive line in that game, Vanderbilt's was superb. They were the number 1 rated unit by Pro Football Focus out of that game. Their ends, Dio Odingbo and Andre Mintz, who's listed as a linebacker, but he's really an edge guy. I don't know whether you call him an end or a linebacker, but he's going to come off the edge. Those 2 guys cause a lot of havoc with a lot of pressures. There was a forced fumble or 2 out of those kids. The defensive line, the middle of the line, played really well. And it's not something we're used to seeing from Vandy guys. I mean, when Vandy's had good defenses, they've been anchored by some good corners or some good linebackers. But rarely has it been the case where we said the defensive line is the best part of this team. They've got some kids who've shown they can play. They've got a little depth behind them. I think the recipe for them to beat anybody is to keep the score down, to win the turnover battle, and to try to get big plays out of your line. Now, on offense, you've got to generate something at some point, and that's a problem. But I think that was kind of the best-case scenario that we saw in week 1, that if they're going to have a better season than we anticipate, it's probably going to come from them being better in the trenches on the defensive side than we thought, and I think that's what we saw 2 weekends ago.
Yeah, Chris, so as you look at that defensive side of the ball, I know a guy South Carolina fans are pretty familiar with, I think, would be Ted Roof. Their defense coordinator comes in. Kind of an interesting matchup there, Mike Bobo against Ted Roof. They went head-to-head. If you go back, Roof was at Georgia Tech, obviously Bobo at UGA. So lots of familiarity there. How, I guess, do you sort of see that chess match? And with Roof coming in, how much have you sort of seen him change, knowing that Derek Mason is obviously always going to sort of have his finger on the defense and that scheme? How is that sort of structured there at Vanderbilt, much like at South Carolina, where you have Travaris Robinson as the defensive coordinator, but we all know Will Muschamp still very, very involved on the defensive side of the ball here?
I think they've given Roof more latitude. I mean, this is opinion, right? But it seems like they've done some more things with pressures. They'd like to bring it up the A-gap a good bit. I don't know that they did that as much last week. I'd have to go back and look. You will see defensive backs coming off the edges some. They've done that some in the past, but it seems like they've taken the idea that we need to be more aggressive. I think Roof was a fantastic hire. I mean, you look at his track record, and he has done well just about everywhere he's been. I was frankly very surprised that they were able to get him out of Appalachian State, which I know they had a coaching change. But Ted Roof's a guy that's, I think he was the defensive coordinator when Auburn won a national title. That was a big hire for them. I think he's made them better. I don't know if their defense is going to be closer to what we saw in week 1 or week 2. But I think the thing that LSU did that gave them problems, LSU, despite all the graduations at receivers, still has kids like Terrence Marshall who can make plays downfield. They are not the fastest bunch in the back 7. And I think that really gave them headaches. They have not tackled very well at times in their secondary. So I think if I'm looking at this game from a Carolina perspective, I'm trying to beat them downfield in the passing game because we saw LSU do it. Teams have also been able to break off some big runs against them. And then, again, once you get in a foot race with them, they're having trouble winning those or making basic tackles and taking angles. So to me, if I'm Carolina, I try to push the field a little bit, push them downfield, because a week ago that worked really well for LSU.
And that'll be a fascinating storyline now that you mentioned that, because South Carolina's had trouble, creating explosive plays down the field. I think what was the stat, Wes? I think it was, 7 or 8 downfield throws really this year, over 20 yards. I mean, South Carolina just trying to find some answers there. And also
only one of them has hit.
And only one of them's hit, right. And so and South Carolina similarly in the secondary had some issues on some explosive plays against Tennessee in the passing game, and certainly against Florida in the passing game too. So I was going to hit on that in terms of the explosive plays. Has Vanderbilt shown? We know defensively against A&M and LSU, they have been susceptible to some longer runs, some longer passes. Offensively, have they shown any firepower in that regard, or have their drives been a little bit more methodical? I know that they were pretty good against A&M. I think they were 7 for 17 on third down. What have you seen from their drives and their potential explosiveness on offense?
Well, this is where offensive lines and receivers and quarterback play work hand in hand, right? If your quarterback has about 2 seconds to throw, it becomes harder for your receivers to separate. If your receivers, and I think they've got 2 that are SEC caliber, like they could play in the rotation of 5 or 6 for most teams, when you don't have multiple guys who can get open downfield and your quarterback is running for your life, that's a really bad combination. The upshot of that is they've had one play of 40 yards or more. That was exactly 40 yards. That was when Cam Johnson caught one between the hash marks. It was probably a 10-yard throw, and I'm going to guess he ran the other 30. Other than that, their longest play from scrimmage was Amir Abdul-Rahman catching, I think, a 26 or a 27-yarder in the opener. So just not a lot of ability to generate explosive plays. I think where Carolina will have an edge in this is just general overall athleticism and speed. And when you look back to the matchups, guys, sometimes we come into these games and it looks like it's a decently even matchup on paper, but then you put the teams on the field and Carolina's just got more athletes. I remember, I'll give you a great example. Brian Edwards a couple years back just seemed like he just ate them to death. And I looked over and I said, they don't have a lot of kids on that sideline that can do what he did. I think that's going to be where Carolina is going to have the edge, because I just worry about their athleticism at the corners, at the receivers, and I just think that's hard to work around.
Chris, I know I think from what I read, Vanderbilt was missing some guys, even a kid I'm really familiar with, Jalen Mahoney, who is from right down the road, Rock Hill, outstanding kid. Saw him play several times in high school. I think he missed game 1, and I believe he's supposed to be back. Are there some injury-wise or even COVID-wise? I don't know what Vandy is putting out there. I know here you don't really get much on the injuries anymore, or the COVID stuff anymore. But who that Vandy may have missed week 1 is coming back this week, or are we just not sure on that stuff?
Well, they didn't have Dimitri Moore in week 1. He's a preseason all-SEC linebacker. His name popped up as a late first rounder, maybe a mid-first rounder in some preseason drafts. Now, he's not played to that level, but the scouts, I guess, think he's got that kind of potential. They got him back for LSU. I'm not going to say it didn't make a difference, but they went from allowing 17 points to allowing 41, so it didn't make enough of a difference for sure. I guess they just sprung leaks other places. You mentioned Jalen Mahoney. They missed him a week ago. I don't know what the situation is this week. It sounds like, if I recall, that he hinted that he'll be back. Mahoney graded as their best corner, if you include the nickel guys last year by Pro Football Focus. And it was in about 350 snaps. And to be honest, it wasn't a group that was outstanding. So, but still, to come in the SEC, we've all seen guys that were future NFL corners that looked horrible as true freshmen. I sit up and take note when a corner plays that well that early. When they did not have him a week ago, they went to Elijah Hamilton, who's a fifth-year senior. Hamilton graded the worst on the team. He got completely turned around by Marshall on a 51-yard touchdown pass where he was in position to make a tackle and just didn't. I think, to me, that's the key one, is if they get Mahoney back. LSU really exploited them in that nickel spot a week ago, and I think he would make a big difference if he's able to return.
Chris, I think the last thing I've got for you personally is, weather considerations is something that we've gotten some questions about. So I'm going to have you put on your meteorologist hat and take you out of your element a little bit. Have you heard anything on your end in terms of weather there, if that will, precipitate any change, no pun intended, or anything like that?
Well, I'm going to my top secret intelligence here at weather.com, and sorry, for some reason I look like I'm in the witness protection program here for a minute with the lighting, but this says it is going to be a high of 73, a low of 66, and rain. I don't know at what point that's expected. But anyway, that is what the forecast is calling from at kickoff. I don't know what that looks like. Now, it's not rained here in about a week, and we get in spells. It seems like we'll go 2 weeks without rain. I don't know if that will carry forward or not, but it looks like it'll be at least cooler weather, which will be very nice.
Chris, you've sort of alluded to it throughout, but just to put a bow on it, do you have, and I know some people give predictions, some people don't, but just do you have a feel for how you think this game is going to play out on Saturday?
I just don't think they can score, guys. And Carolina has allowed, 28 points the last 3 years. It's something like that. I just always feel like they get in that game, other than the one when Kyle Shermer was here, and they struggle to score. I remember Jadeveon Kinlaw just wrecking them, or Javon Kinlaw, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm mixing him up with other great Carolina. I've seen a few. We thank God we've got him in Nashville now, by the way. But they just always seem to have answers. They're two defensive-minded coaches. Carolina's always get better talent. This game, Carolina has not lost to Vandy since 2008. And the average margin of victory in that span, I think, is 11.3 points. So it's been closer than that win streak has kind of indicated. But I don't know. I just don't think Vanderbilt has got the overall athleticism and speed to win the game. The 12-point line to me, and I'm not seeing Carolina like you guys have, and I know they've got their issues. Carolina recently under Muschamp just seems to save its best for them. I don't know. I'm having a hard time seeing Vanderbilt scoring more than say 14 or 17 points. I'm questioning which defense is the real one. I don't know. I think the 12-point line is about right. There's some things on paper where I think it looks like it might be an okay matchup for Vanderbilt, but I just see these teams face off year to year, and the better athletes have won, and I think that'll be the case this year too.
Chris, great insight, man. We really appreciate the time. I know you're busy, so thanks for joining the show, and enjoy the game on Saturday, man. And y'all are still able to go in at least, right? I know the fans are not at all, I guess.
Well, they were allowing 5 media credentials on the home side, and so far we have been shut out the first 2 weeks. Even though we have covered them, I've personally covered them longer than everybody who was in the press box put together Saturday. It'll be the same way this week. I'm told it's purely coincidental, that it has nothing to do with our criticism of the athletic department. But, it's funny that we're on a rotation, and yet the people who were there the first week are there the second week. And you're cutting out your longest credentialed media members. I've never been denied a credential in 18 years anywhere, and so we're 0 for 2 this year. Like I said, it's a very strange climate around that program, and I think there's probably a reason that Chancellor Daniel Diermeyer has made some changes pretty quickly. By the way, the LSU Rivals guys did get credentialed last week. So they credentialed the Rivals site for the opponent, but not their own.
Wow. Sorry, I was just assuming, but that's I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah, I've always assumed too, but nothing surprises me these days.
It is 2020. I'm with you. Well, Chris, we appreciate it. Stay safe out there, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Always a pleasure. You guys do a wonderful job at your site, and keep up the great work.
Appreciate that. Chris. And if you're a South Carolina fan on here, go to vandysports.com. You want to read more from the Vanderbilt perspective. I think even Chris has a write-up over there as well, giving them the South Carolina perspective. Chris Clark, So go check them out. That is vandysports.com. Chris Lee, appreciate it, man. Have a good one, okay?
You too.
Thanks, Chris.